They can hear us. We have Hot Mic Main. Is it working? There we are. And we are live, guys. Only 2 minutes late. Definitely not much later. We definitely weren't planning to do this earlier. I was just trying to get it to work behind the scenes. And here with me tonight for Daddy Chats Live is Aidan Thornbury, the other half of the Law Lodge. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, I'm Aidan Thornbury. I'm the guy who does all the filming and editing over at the Lore Lodge. And then I do co-hosting of the podcast once a week. So
And you've got
that's
your own
me.
little show you do occasionally.
Very
Yeah.
rarely. Yeah, I'll do just once a year, maybe I'll hop on Twitch. But, that's...
I like the one you did on the Korean pilots, not Korean pilots, the pilots in the Korean War.
Oh, Bomber Mafia.
Yeah,
Yeah. That the Malcolm Gladwell book that came out last year. Yeah, I did that. That was fun. That was fun to do. Unfortunately, that type of content wasn't really exactly what the subscribers on the Lore Lodge were interested in, which is fully understandable considering it's not folklore, it's not a conspiracy, and it's not a missing persons case. But yeah, it was fun. I've considered having my own channel for that kind of stuff, but the amount of research that would take for me personally, it would be unsustainable at the moment. But that doesn't mean I'm not considering doing other possible options. We will see. Time will tell.
Ooh, little hinting at the future content there. I like that. I like that. It's very.
I'm not making any commitments, but I am open
Yeah,
to
no.
the idea. I've definitely toyed around with certain possibilities, but it's just a matter of whether or not the time exists and things like that.
Oh no, I whenever I hint at something I'm planning on doing, but I know probably won't be for a while, I'm like, yeah, no, and this thing might happen, and I never say what it is, but everyone's like, what happened to that thing you suggested you might do? And I'm like, what thing? I don't delete the video, delete the video, delete the video. But
Yeah.
no, but we are kind of covering a little bit of. You could say not folklore or myth, but definitely a legend. In that, oh, that was a smooth transition. I'm proud of myself for that.
Nice. Well done.
The man, affectionately and colloquially known as the father of the American Navy, John Paul Jones. So I've done a bit of research on to catch myself up, but I've heard he started life as the son of a gardener, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
So go on.
I have my book here. I haven't read it in a while. But yeah, I believe I could double check you, but I don't want to waste that time.
Yeah.
That sounds right. I know it was in Scotland, and he was one of. I think he had a couple siblings.
Yeah.
And initially I think I could be totally making this up, but from what I remember, he wasn't really great in school, and he was a bit of a troublemaker, and he just wanted to kind of like get beyond where he was. And so he ended up on the seas, on the high seas. And I think he was with the British Navy first,
Hmm.
and then he left due to unaliving someone, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't know if you heard that bit of the
I
story.
didn't hear that bit. What the bit I heard was like he was very upset because the Royal Navy wouldn't give him a commission, which was one of the main reasons he left well, he joined the Merchant Navy because they wouldn't give him a commission in the Royal
Yes.
Navy. Which was as we'll discuss later on, the Royal Navy would soon learn to regret not giving.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, they didn't realize who they were dealing with at the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, he joined the merchants, and then I think it was when he joined the merchants that he was sailing around in the Caribbean,
Hmm.
and there was somebody who was punished on one of his ships for some act that deemed genuine punishment. Like it was clearly like he had broken a rule, and so that he was punished. But the punishment was so severe that he ended up contracting some form of infection and dying about like I think like within a week of I think they flogged him or something like that. But the whole ship and like had become friendly with like the governor of South Carolina or something at the time, and everybody was just telling him like, hey, like you are going to be considered responsible for this. You should run. And so he did. He went inland, and I can't remember exactly where he went, but he left the sea far behind him in order to essentially not be prosecuted for something that like technically he was responsible for it. Technically he wasn't. It was a very weird thing. Definitely, like, morally responsible for the death of that guy. There's no questioning that
Yeah.
there. But in terms of justifiable legal punishment, it was a little bit murky. So everybody was just like, just go. And so he did. But not for long, because he had salt in his blood and he could not leave the sea. And inevitably, when the Revolutionary War started, he essentially pressured a bunch of people in Congress, or what was developing into the Congress, to start a navy. And everybody was like, why do we need a navy? And he was like, we need a navy.
To be
So
fair, if you're
inevitably,
going up against the British Empire, you need a navy.
you do. He had an argument, despite the fact that it was really just due to the fact that they were ruining their trade ships essentially. And again, I'm a little murky on the details, but from what I recall, like you said, he got that commission, and he became the devil of the sea for the English. He went directly over to the British Isles and literally port hopped, destroying everyone that he went to the point where he became infamous in England and all of the surrounding countries. And yeah, I'll let you chip in here, because I don't know how much you have or wanted to, throw in here, but we'll save the Serapis story for a little later.
Yeah, that's towards the end of his career, really. Like the bit where I pick up mostly is the fact that he comes into contact with Catherine the Great, who obviously is the historical figure I like don't admire as much as I used to. Because inevitably, whenever you look into a historical figure, you always find stuff that makes you dislike them, like unaliving 20,000 Polish people. Yeah, she did that. She did that.
Well, we're all learning today.
Yeah. Catherine the Great was like she did a lot for women's education, women's empowerment. She also unalived 20,000 Polish people. So
not great, not a great look.
Yeah, not exactly perfectly balanced. Thanos wouldn't be happy. Oh no, so John Paul Jones going over, and it's the English are like, we don't know what's going on. Like, because there was a few like American captains who managed the voyage over and did a lot of raiding around the coast. And it's at this point I know, because I believe it was Benjamin Franklin. I know it was one of the founding fathers who was going over to sort an alliance with France. And
yeah,
John Paul Jones was like tasked with, well, like, you're going over there anyways. You literally were born there, so like you might as well. So he was tasked with going to France, and he absolutely loved France. Which, as cool as he is, that's a bit of an L for John Paul Jones, falling in love with France.
A little bit. Yeah, he made some mistakes in France. From what I recall,
he's as actually I was watching. I think it was Biographics YouTube channel was like the preliminary research, and the way they placed it was whilst he was in France, he acquainted himself with ladies of disrepute, which is the most English way of saying prosy I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, I guarantee that old Benny Frank was a big influence on him, because he was just as bad over there. They both had that dog in them.
Yeah.
Ben was in his 80s, and he was
Really?
just like, and he was running the town. It was bad. It was so bad.
I thought Franklin was in his like late 40s, early 50s. I didn't realize he was in his 80s.
I think I don't know if it was 80s, but I know he was like up there in age, and he was living like he was a young man. He had the heart and the desire of a young bull, even though he was not one.
I mean, listen, if you've created an entire country, fair play. You're gonna want to relax to as you retire. But no, so John Paul Jones, when he's not acquainting himself with as many women as humanly possible, because he was one of my favorite bits of sources was he was quite well acquainted with some of the ladies of the French court, which is basically a polite way of saying that the ladies of the French court liked him to acquaint them frequently. So anyways, when he wasn't doing that, he actually went up north and started raiding a couple of Scottish settlements, and I believe he might have raided Glasgow or Edinburgh. I think it was Edinburgh. I can't remember which one it was. I know it was one of the big cities, and it, that it was so it backfired. So what happened was the Scottish had also recently led a rebellion at that point. I think it might have been the Jacobites, and so they weren't allowed a local militia, and so it was much less raiding. More he was just, I'm just going to take stuff, and then at some point there was two Royal Navy ships that turn up, and then he might have kind of lost that battle. It was more of a draw, and he sort of withdrew. But yeah, that's my knowledge of like his time raiding the British coast, which I admit is less my knowledge of him raiding British coast, more of my knowledge of him raiding the French court. Uh,
Fair. It's good knowledge either way.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, you're gonna get a good story no matter which story you focus on that one.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. But back in the I don't know much about this one, but do you know much about the tale of him in the Bahamas? I know he did a couple of battles in the Bahamas.
Yeah, I know it was. I don't know of his, because I think he was down there for two stints. I know the end of the first one was when he fled because of the whole issue with the disciplinary, the disciplining that went wrong. Um, but in terms of the specifics of what he was doing down there, I do not recall.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
We might as well go on to the. We're very early into it, but we might as well head on to the Serapis then. Might as well. That's the bit everyone wants. That's the bit everyone wants.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So yeah, the Serapis, that was so at the time, Jones was sailing a ship. He was essentially the commodore for a very small fleet. It was him and two other ships. His flagship was the Bonhomme Richard, which was named after Poor Richard's Almanac, which was Benjamin Franklin's, routinely published almanac for, the colonies and things like that. So just kind of as a nod to him and whatnot, he named it the Bonhomme Richard. And they had been running this campaign where they would go port to port in England and just absolutely destroy them. And so they stumbled upon the Serapis, which was a frigate that was, I think, at least double the size of the Bonhomme Richard. And it had a couple ships of its own with it. So when these groups of ships met off the coast of England, the Serapis unloaded a full broadside into the Bonhomme Richard. And that took out all but three of the Bonhomme Richard's guns. It had three cannons left that functioned after that, after a single broadside. And so when the ships got close enough, the captain of the Serapis said, are you prepared to surrender? Or something very similar to those lines. It was like, are you ready to surrender, essentially? Recognizing that, you have almost no means of fighting back at this point, and we want to be merciful here. John Paul Jones's exact quote in response was, "I have not yet begun to fight." Jones, with only 3 working cannons, manages to take over the Serapis.
How did this
Somehow, because he's a lunatic Scotsman who doesn't know when to stop. That's literally it. I mean, he was notorious for having a really bad temper. And I guarantee, in that scenario, he was just furious, probably seeing red, and was like, I'm not taking no for an answer here. But yeah, he managed to, as the Bonhomme Richard sank beneath him, somehow overpower and take the ship, the Serapis. So he got the rest of his crew that he could and managed to sail this thing and, took what prisoners they had. And that ship itself was badly damaged as well. But he sailed it into I believe it was a Dutch port. And one of the things was this, how when you have your car, you have your registration, you have your license plate, stuff like that. You're not allowed to drive without a license plate. Back in those days, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you could not sail without a flag on the back that denoted which country of origin you came from. And that flag was just, as important as a license plate is today or a registration and things like that. Well, during the battle, the Serapis had lost its flag of origin, and they didn't have any spares and whatnot. And now, especially at this point, it was technically an American ship because it had been taken by an American crew in battle. Well, they didn't have an American flag. The Bonham Richards flag sunk with it. So they go into port, and normally, if you showed up at a port, without an identification flag, you could be arrested. You could be, charged and asked for a sum of money, essentially as a bail or whatever that would be. But when they pulled in with the Serapis, the harbor master and then the local officials recognized that it was John Paul Jones. And because they had heard all of the stories of him absolutely annihilating multiple English ports, they were like, okay, so we don't want to get destroyed by this guy. Hey, John, we'll just make you a flag. What's your country's flag look like? And so John Paul Jones used a description of what the Betsy Ross flag looked like that he had gotten from Benjamin Franklin, and it was not... The Serapis flag looked nothing like the Betsy Ross flag, nor does it look like anything related to an American flag today, aside from the 13 stars being red, white, and blue with stripes. I can flip the camera around, actually, because I have it up on my wall. You can see my whole apartment.
I've seen
there.
some depictions of it, and I was like... Because I was confused. I was like, why is this... Ooh. Yeah, no, that... I mean, it's still a very cool flag, to be fair.
Yeah. No, I think it's the coolest American... This is the kickball poster of a kickball league that my buddies and I did a few years back. Anyway,
very
that's
nice.
Besides the point. Yeah, so that's the Serapis flag. And as you can see, yeah, very cool, very different, but definitely not like a normal or typical American flag, even at the time. But yeah, so they made that flag, which today is still considered to be a legitimate and official United States flag. But yeah, that was...
You could legitimately fly that flag on a ship and it'd still be counted as a United States flag.
100%.
That's brilliant.
Oh yeah. He was so chaotic and so ridiculously scary to everyone that he ever met, that they dare not challenge that to this day, which is hilarious. And I think nowadays it's more out of a sign of respect, but even still, I think that's entertaining.
Oh, I think because I know at one point wasn't he was almost sort of rejected from the American Navy. I know, like, because he did another stint in France under the French Navy. So how did he manage to get himself kicked, considering his view now of how he is this sort of, literally called the father of the American Navy? How did he get kicked out of it?
Yeah, so I'm a little hazy after the Revolutionary War in terms of what he did, but I do know that he the biggest problem was he just had such a big temper and a lack of control of emotion, where he was an incredible leader in battle, but you could not put him in a civilized society or even just like a dinner party. He wasn't capable of it. Sorry, go on. I was just going to say, and he just kind of chased warfare where he could, to my understanding. And so he almost went back to being a bit of a merchant marine in the sense of he just kind of would work with whatever government or persons would allow him to do what he did best.
Fair. I mean, it's so very, very similar to Mad Jack Churchill then, from World War II, like the man who was famously quoted as saying, "If those damn Yanks hadn't dropped the bomb on Japan, we could have kept the war going for another 4 years." I think he said it's one of my. I don't know. I'm very much paraphrasing. It's one of my favorite quotes in history because he was genuinely mad. World War II ended, like when they took but he did. Not to go into it too much because it's very spicy at the moment, but he did do some peacekeeping efforts in a certain region that I won't speak about because then I everyone knows the volatile region that you say in YouTube will get mad at me for saying. But he did some peacekeeping efforts over there, and it was very famous. Oh, sorry. It was a very famous moment of. I know I'm going on a tangent about Mad Jad Churchill, but I love him, so I'm going to bring him up. But so there was an Israeli convoy going past, and his orders from the UN was no matter what, do not get involved. So this man, under heavy fire, walks through the battlefield up to this convoy and says, "Do you require assistance?" And they obviously say, "Yes, we're being shot at." And he goes, "Cool, start shooting." And he just gets it against UN. Or yeah, he got in a lot of trouble for that. But he just
Holy
didn't
shit!
care.
I wonder why.
He just if there was a battle, he didn't care whose side he was on, as long as he got to fight.
Oh, good lord.
Be a Mad Jack.
There really just are people like that in the world,
Yeah,
which
same
is
as
crazy.
we've got Adrian Carton d'Ivoire, as well, the Belgian from World War One, who fought for the
Mm.
British. The British. He literally lost an eye, lost several fingers, and he was considered like in or differently abled is the politically correct term now, but he would be like
Mm.
he would be on government assistance in today's society, and he was like, no, send me back to the front. I'm fairly certain he lost he full Luke Skywalker at one point. I'm fairly certain he lost a hand. I don't know if that's true. I
Oh.
know he had an injury to his hand of some degree, but yeah, he was
Mm.
yeah, Adrian Cotton. I do keep meaning to do a full video on him, but I know it's going to take me like 6 years to gather all the research. But no, from going back to John Paul, and I was towards the end of the career, as I said earlier, he did another stint with the French, and when he went to the Russian Empire, because Catherine the Great went through a phase of hiring as many foreign naval officers as she could. Um, this backfired when she hired John Paul, because none of the British officers she wanted to hire would then work for the Russian Navy
Mm.
anymore, because they all hated John Paul Jones so much.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which is really funny because there was very nearly a point when the British Empire and the Russian Empire had a really close alliance through Catherine the Great. And this is one of the reasons it didn't happen, along from a lot of Russian officials not liking it. And I think everyone could agree if that alliance could have happened, the world would have been a very, very different place, because those two military powers coming together, the strongest navy, and at that point in history, the strongest army in the world. I would love to see some alternate history scenarios on that. But yeah, and then ironically, from what I know of that, is he got kicked out of Russia for a murder.
Mm.
And then he passed away in France, I believe.
Yeah, it sounds right. Yeah, again, I'm hazy on after the revolution, but that from what I've heard, that does sound accurate.
Yeah. And what we'll do is we'll go and take some questions from the chat, and then we'll head on to some other Revolutionary War tidbits, because I've got the massive American Eagle. I'm so proud I found that American Eagle. That looks so cool. And that and yes to everyone, before someone says it in the comments on the live chat or after this has gone up, that is an AI generated background. It's not actually John Paul fighting a Serapis. Although it does look cool. I love AI at the moment. It makes my life very easy.
It is fun.
Smoke before it's a Trip. Nice to see you, Trip. Also buy his book, guys. I always say it whenever he comes in. He asks, "Are you though?" In response to me saying going live now, knowing full well I'm about to be late, and he was correct. Pumpkin Bear says Thornbury in block caps. So does Wolfgang, except he puts an exclamation mark at the end. It's not in block caps. Question for the both of you: thoughts on trains in the UK versus USA? I hate the trains in the UK. I don't think there's enough of them.
Fair. Well, yeah. Well, I guess a little bit of context would be get into that question. But yeah, let me hear.
I don't know what the context is. That's literally the question. His thoughts on the
Fair.
trains in the UK. I don't know what we was talking about to bring that question up.
I could probably just because I think trains being one of my special interests is a thing. If we're talking about historical trains, I like the steam engines of the US a lot more. If we're talking about modern trains, I like the trains of the US a lot more. I like the industrialness of a lot of the steam locomotives that we had. I'm big on the like I love the huge locomotives. They're just extremely big, extremely powerful. Um, Same thing with freight.
Mm.
I also just love the aesthetic style of them a little more. Um, yeah, it's just all around big U.S. locomotive fan.
I mean, I'm not trains aren't my area of specialty.
Hmm.
All I will say is when I think of like UK trains, right, like our early trains in the sort of Victorian period, I imagine tunnels filled with soot and people having special handkerchiefs to go on the London Underground. When I think of
Yep.
American trains, I think of the Wild West and like the one train stop for 4 million miles, and then the train pulls in, then the gunslinger gets off, and then the film starts. That's the difference I have of my opinion. But no, for modern trains, I would 100% say the British railway system is horrific. Like if I want to go anywhere in the country, I have to go through London first, and then I can go anywhere else. I can't go. There's places where it take me 45 minutes to go on a straight line on the trains, and the train tracks exist, but they were destroyed. But then we're getting onto politics. We don't do that on this channel.
Smart move.
Yeah, yeah. I saw when you catch where you're going and your train of thought and you're like, no, ironic train of thought, and you're like, no, let's just pull that back. um
Yep.
uh, Wolfgang says son of a gardener sounds like a veiled insult. I think that's from the start of the podcast. It does actually, you son of a gardener. It does if you say it with the right tone.
It does a
um
tad bit, yeah.
Ew, French is currently my favorite comment. Smoke with Fairy Tales again. John Paul Jones, blessed be his name, is considered the father of the U.S. Navy and also by one of the legends of the U.S. Marine Corps lore. And then the Serapis's captain told John Paul Jones, praise be upon him. I'm guessing Trip really likes John Paul Jones.
It would seem as much. You might know more than I do.
Yeah. To strike his colours, which means cut down his flag and surrender. I see. Oh, right. So John Paul would like was obviously that would annoy him. I Every American speaking about a flag, the American flag is always very very protective of that flag. Is it true that if the flag touches the ground, you have to burn it?
That's what you're supposed to do. I don't know how many people truly follow that. But yeah, as
How did that
I don't know where
start?
it's in, I think it's just a matter of respect. I don't know
Yeah.
what the origin of it is, but yeah, I know that is a rule. I've never seen someone actually execute that rule, and I've seen people drop the flag many times. Um, whether especially like on the 4th of July with like little mini flags, whatever.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, somewhere in U.S. code, that is a rule
that.
that no one follows, but it's a rule.
I mean, I like obviously, I've got the union. Well, we call it the Union flag as well, which is always ironic because I go the parallels between the United States and the UK which is funny for like most of our histories, the early histories, we hated each other, yet so much stuff is like almost the exact same. Um,
Yeah,
but I have that up, and I like it's just not a like it's not something that's sort of inbred into my brain. If I drop it, I just put it back up. Like the first time I heard that, I couldn't fathom. I was like, why would you burn the flag? Just pick it up and then put it back. um, right, moving on to the next one. Neat. Oh, from Wolfgang's again. Neat flag. They never told us much about him in high school. I think there was maybe one paragraph about him in our books. It's more than I've
yeah. I
got.
mean, there's not a lot of stuff really digestible for kids in John Paul Jones's story.
Well, they could speak about his frequent friendships with women of the French court.
They could. Yeah, they probably shouldn't, but
Yeah,
they
yeah, they
could.
definitely should. He was very good friends with many French officials. They just all happened to be women. um, Teddy Roosevelt is honestly one of my. Oh, we could actually break into Teddy Roosevelt if you wanted to. I don't know how much Teddy Roosevelt facts you know.
I know a little bit.
The only one I know
I
is about
love.
the fact he met Bigfoot, apparently.
Yeah, the Bauman story. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. There's that. There's him, boxing, I think. I can't remember if it was wrestling or boxing. I think it was boxing. He did it even while he was president. He would just like box people in like the basement of the White House. It was pretty. Yeah,
Just sign an executive
dude.
order and okay, right, I've got to go down to the boxing match now.
Basically, yeah. He was like the ultimate American man. He was a big hunter, but also like a huge conservationist. He started the national parks. Um, yeah, he just like there's a good meme where it's the political compass, and then it's like something that like in the four corners is each a thing that Teddy Roosevelt did, and it's like you can't place the man because he is the political compass. He is the American male. He's what we all aspire to be in our hearts somewhere.
He just
Yeah,
thought, I like the idea of this. I'm going to do it.
yeah, basically. He's like, what's going to help the American people the most? And I'm going to do that. Let me see if I can find it.
So wait, so how did he get the nickname Bull Moose? Or is that a
I
different
think
president?
no, it's him. I think it was from his
Boxing.
boxing. Yeah, I think it was just because he couldn't, like, he was just really tough. Oh yeah, here we go. I don't know if this is the exact one, but it's on the authoritarian left. It's disbanded monopolies. Up here, American imperialist. Down here, established national parks, loved nature. And then down here, believed that everyone had the right to own guns. So he was everywhere.
He literally just did. He literally is the political compass.
Correct.
He is the definition of horseshoe theory.
Yes. Yeah, it's great.
That's probably why, because I know he did the full 2 terms. That's probably why he got the full 2 terms, because he is the appeal to everyone, which is a
Yeah.
hard
Yeah, no,
thing to
everyone
do.
loved him.
I think,
Oh yeah, well, especially nowadays.
yeah,
Oof.
I think I was about to say. I feel like it was probably easier back then. Because was he president during World War One? I can't remember if he was like pushed for America to join in. I
I know it
can't
was
remember.
around that time. I feel like he may have been just before,
Yeah.
but let me check.
Because I have this. I mean, I'm also feel like there's a mockumentary about like if War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells had actually happened and it became like a scientific thing, and I'm fairly certain I'm mixing up the Teddy Roosevelt from that universe with the real world Teddy Roosevelt. But
Fair.
I can remember something about him being really pro America joining the First World War, which was
Yeah, he was president between 1901 and 1909.
so he wouldn't have had the power to send to join the war, but he would have had the. Okay, so that lines up then. That lines up that I'm probably not imagining that. Yeah, no, I've heard him described as the American Churchill as well, which is an interesting description.
And that is interesting.
Moving on to our next. What other questions we got in? Digital neat flag. Mad Jack Churchill with his bagpipes and bow. That is 100% true. He went into battle. He also was quoted as saying, "An officer is not properly dressed for battle if he does not have his sword." And that is an actual
That's
authentic.
great.
Yeah, Mad Jack. He went into battle with a sword. He went into battle with bagpipes, and he is the only person in World War II with a confirmed bow and arrow kill, uh, which is.
That is amazing.
It's a he was a legend. The question was in general. That's in relation to the train one. So history. Where we are again. You know what time it is. I'm scared to ask what time it is. I've heard that being as into the flag, in the UK as US would be considered racist over there. Is that true? That's getting into political territory, so I'm nervous to answer that question. All I'm saying is that in the UK, and in Scotland in particular, you can go to prison for a joke. And that's where we'll leave it there before, because I don't like to do politics. If you do want my political opinions, you can follow my Twitter, which is the only place I do get political, because it's Twitter. Oh,
Not anymore. It's not.
No, oh yeah, sorry, X. X. Does Elon not realize that sounds like a porn site? Does you think he's realized that?
I'm sure he did, and I'm sure that's half the reason he did it.
That's true. When you've got that much money, you can meme. You can meme.
Oh yeah. Yet more people, not many people who have that much money do it. I guess they're just not that bold.
No. Well, Bill Gates was I'm not. I was gonna make the Microsoft joke, but then I remembered YouTube. But we all know why he named it Microsoft. You know, it was self-reflection. There we go.
Oh my god.
The British sarcasm is coming out. There was actually someone who said there's nothing more British than a British person speaking to an American.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Um, the Bull Moose was a political party that he was a part of to run as a third party candidate.
That
Interesting.
makes sense.
So yeah, the fan art. No, there's no fan art of me yet, and there will continue to be no fan art. Please no. I know what happens when there's fan art. No, that was Wilson. TR was before. The Great White Fleet, gunboat diplomacy. Oh yeah, no, I've heard that term about American politics. Where does the term gunboat diplomacy come from? Is that
Honestly, not sure. That's a great Mattis question. But yeah, I'm not totally sure.
I know you guys at one point, because you literally sailed over to Japan and was like, start trading with us or we're gonna like shoot you, which is my favorite America moment ever.
Kinda, yeah. Well, I mean, like after the Reconstruction, when we annihilated them at the end of World War II, and then we immediately went back and we were like, hey, we'll help you out.
I meant like really just after Japan had like come out of isolation.
Oh, you mean back like way back? Yeah.
Because there was a race between you, us, and I believe the no, it wasn't the Portuguese, but it might have been the French. But like all three of us were racing to Japan to get them to trade first, and you guys were like, "Well, they're not listening, so what if we just showed them the cannons?"
Yeah, it sounds like the American way to do it. It's like a big mafia boss. You're gonna trade with us, or else.
Literally.
Yep.
It's fine. And then American-Japanese relations were amazing after that. They forward and nothing bad ever happened.
It's been roses and gumdrops and daisies ever since. I don't know what you could possibly even think would be against that mentality.
So we've been going for nearly an hour. We could do a couple of how many World War II naval battles do you know of?
Almost none, unfortunately.
American Revolutionary battles? Do we want to finish off on a proper revolutionary one?
I mean, I grew up in Valley Forge, so I know about like the winter at Valley Forge.
I mean, go on then. I have no idea what that is. So I'm completely open
really?
to learning about it. Yeah, you have to remember the British school system was like, so then there was a British Empire and that was big, and then something happened, and then World War II.
Fair. Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you a brief history of it. So I live in Valley Forge, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And that was where Washington and the Army wintered. They found, that spot, and they realized it was a good place to kind of hunker down for the winter. And more particularly because the Army was mostly made up of like just farmers and just people who, had their rifles and had their desire essentially to break away from Britain and gain their independence and such, but they were not trained military people. They had to spend this winter being trained, and it was a bitterly cold winter, and there were many deaths from exposure and such, and injuries from the previous battlings in the earlier and warmer parts of the year. But yeah, that was where the American Army was forged over that winter in Valley Forge. It was not an intended pun there. But yeah, for months it was just bitterly cold, and they were just trying to survive and then try and train so that way they could, find themselves with the skills to be able to go up against the greatest military might of the time. And they did it.
Which is it is an amazing story to think about, because the American Revolution is one of those stories in history, much like people say the Romans conquering the parts of Britain they did shouldn't have never happened. It doesn't make sense when you follow the path of the Roman Empire, the path they were leading, their path of conquest. It doesn't make sense for them to conquer Britain until you have the glory hunting need for the emperors, because they needed to conquer something. And what was the easy path at that time? Because you go east, you got the Parthians. You go east, you go west, you got some Celts. Neither are easy, but you choose the easiest option. The American Revolution is very similar in, when you look at it, there was so many moments that, and I mean this as not in no way offensively, there were so many battles that you shouldn't have won that you somehow did, and they turned history on its head.
Yep. Yeah, I again, I'm not a Revolutionary War historian by any means or anything like that, but my layman's view of it is just that I would imagine that to some extent England got complacent. And I think it was just the raw. It was a heavily emotional war in the sense of, America wasn't fighting because they wanted land. They were fighting because they felt they were being oppressed. And that was worth dying for to them. And keep in mind, I think it was only 3% of the population actually actively took place in the fighting. A third of the population of the US at the time were still loyalists. A third of the people didn't care either way. And a third were pro leaving. And then, and only a small percentage of them actually were actively involved. But I think it's that, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and, you see it even today where it's the people they really strongly believe something are the ones that make the change, even if it's a small amount of people. And back then, protesting wasn't going to work with a king, so they had to take up arms and do what they needed to do. And I think it was just the raw determination. It's the reason that, the Winter at Valley Forge happened, and the reason that, the war just continued to go on is because they wouldn't give up. And granted, France helped too. They gave us a lot of help and assistance there. So it's not like we did it all on our own. But I think, when you're in a place where you feel like you are being oppressed, you are being, treated unjustly, and you have the will and the means and the opportunity to do something about it, I think it should be expected that individual or that group will, because why wouldn't they? So that's my, again, layman's understanding of the Revolutionary War.
We just had a comment in, bouncing off what you said. Also, in the Revolution, a lot of the battle was against German mercenaries who weren't all there consensually, and they would just go and make a new home in America instead of fight. That's brilliant. Okay, so we've been hired to shoot the Americans. So we're hundreds of miles away from the people that have hired us. So there's no way they could discipline us if we mutiny. Anyways, you've now got to go and shoot. Where are you all going? Why are you setting up homesteads?
Which that's actually a really interesting tidbit of information, because one of my ancestors, his name was, I think it was James Stillwagon. He had name. Immigrated. What's that?
Brilliant name.
Oh yeah, it's great, right? He had emigrated from Germany to the colonies in 1765, and in 1775 he joined in, and he went to fight for the Revolutionary War. And it was in Pennsylvania and such like that. He actually was a POW for 2 years with the British, and his wife, my great grandmother or whatever, her home was invaded by British soldiers, taken over by them, and then she was forced out into the field with her children and forced to watch the home be burned to the ground. And this was when her husband was a POW, so she went to. Yeah, well, she went to his. It happens. But she went to his commanding officer and was like, "Hey, I need help." And she supposedly, from our family history, became one of the women who were involved in the whole kind of Molly Pitcher thing of helping out the American soldiers on the battlefields and running them ammunition and water and medical supplies and things like that. So I do have members of my family who were were in that. There's actually even just in that line, I have members of my family history that fought in every major U.S. conflict up until I think the Gulf War. I don't know if anybody fought in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan, but
It's
yeah,
fine. We'll all get to fight in World War Three soon.
yeah, right, exactly.
I make that joke, and in
Um,
2 years I'll regret it.
right. But wait, so the main reason I bring up that story though is because that's an interesting tidbit about German mercenaries being utilized because there were a lot of immigrants from Germany in the
Mm,
colonies, and my that ancestor of mine was from Germany, so if he was then being forced to fight other Germans that he, either like, essentially grew up, that was his homeland. Imagining the British Germans, the Germans that the British hired, I can imagine them being like, well, why am I going to kill my brother for
yeah.
money for a king I don't care about? I'll just take the money and like go move in with, this guy who grew up
Yeah.
6 towns away from me. Why not?
Pretty
Like,
good
you
business
know,
plan if you think about it.
yeah, seriously. So like, I wouldn't, again, I think that probably feeds a little bit into the idea of the British complacency in the sense of like,
Mm.
hiring and also the lack of motivation on their side as opposed to, the American drive of independence and the personal need for freedom.
Well, you got to remember at this point as well, the English Civil War was what 150 years, 200 years, like prior max. I'm fairly certain the English Civil War was in the 1600. Hang on, let me do a googling of my own now. I'm fairly certain the English Civil War. Yeah, 1642 to 1651. So that's just like little over 100 years before. So they're going over, and in their head, like at this point, the average American was still a fellow Englishman in their eyes, or a fellow Scotsman, or most certainly a fellow Irishman who had their own reasons to not want to fight for the British. So they're gonna sit there like the amount I'm fairly certain the American Revolution had it like the highest number of defections the British Army like ever had.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I always say when it comes to British Empire, nearly every time we're like the superior power and we should easily win, we lose. Whenever we're the underdog in a situation where we should lose, we win.
Yep.
Like, and I
You
don't
you you
understand that.
you, you fight harder when you're the underdog.
Yeah, it's true.
When no one believes in you, but you're still part of the fight, the only way you can win is if you believe in yourself.
Mm.
And if you believe in yourself more than your opponent, you're going to go longer than they can. I mean, this is me talking like our town's, Philly is very Rocky centric because that movie took place here and it epitomized a lot of the Philadelphia mentality in the sense of Philly very frequently feels like an underdog city now because we're jammed between New York City and Washington D.C. and like if you're looking at any of the national news coverage or anything like that, you see New York and D.C. listed on the map, but Philly's like never there, and all of the other sports teams hate us in particular, and like we are a bit of degenerates to some extent. There is absolute truth to that, but it's been a blue collar town for a long time, and nothing wrong with that, but people just kind of look down on Philly a little bit, and that movie was a great inspiration in many ways because it was that kind of determination of he didn't even win at the end of the movie, but it wasn't his goal. His goal was just to fight harder against the antagonist of that movie than anyone else ever had. The whole crux of that movie is that no one has ever gone a full 15 rounds with this guy. No one's ever
Mm.
lasted a full fight. And Rocky in that movie says he's like, I can't beat him, but I'm gonna go the distance. And like that, I think that
It's
mentality of an underdog is just like it doesn't matter. I'm going to go the distance no matter what. Whereas if you're top dog and you're complacent, then
like Rocky
you're
3.
not
I
gonna
was about to say.
exactly yeah. Then you're not gonna put in the effort that you need to. And yeah, Rocky 3, great example.
I mean, yeah, and then I always talking about the complacency because you like obviously Rocky bounces back at the end of that film. I always say it was when I was younger. My joke was the British Empire abandoned America so they could run over to India, which isn't. It is historically inaccurate, but it is also isn't historically inaccurate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if there was some motivation there.
It would, yeah. I mean, obviously spices and that, because everywhere, obviously now because the trade is so different. But it always, whenever I look at like 17th, 18th century history, I'm like, everyone was obsessed with spices, but we don't put any on our food. Like we was obsessed with this stuff.
Everybody's like, "Oh, we don't need them. We'll just sell them."
Yeah, that's why people started putting one on. No, 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 no. We can make money from this. We loot their spices, sell them.
That is funny.
Imagine being the guy cooking the first British guy food. It's like, what's it? Spice? Interesting. I think, yeah, just like, hey, Jeff, come and take a taste of this. I think we might stay around. And that was the worst moment of any. Well, that's when we get on to the controversial side of modern history, which is I think is interesting. How it's portrayed, how that's portrayed as the ultimate evil when it's no different to any other part of history, which is my
What's that?
like the colonial empires versus stuff like the Romans are regarded as these heroes of culture when in everything they did some awful stuff like the
Yeah,
there I go.
I was just gonna say, I just think it's a failure of modern education. I think, because it's fresh,
Mm.
people are
I mean, it was
taught
bad.
about how.
We're both saying it was bad, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I think because it's fresh and it's like recent history, people gravitate to being, learning about that more, teaching about that more,
and angry.
um, and we know more of the details about it. And I feel like I never was taught that much Roman history. It was all very glossed over,
Mm.
and I'm
And
sure I went
glorified.
to. Exactly, yeah, and like I went to some pretty decent schools, I'd like to think, and I'm sure at schools that don't have as much funding and such, it probably gets glossed over even further. But the the travesties and horrors of what America and other countries that still currently exist have done are still relevant today because there's still permeations of it
Mm.
throughout
Oh yeah,
society in many ways.
the repercussions are
Yeah.
still felt.
Exactly. So they're still relevant, and so they're a little bit more important to know now. Whereas like the atrocities that the Romans, took part in,
Sort of
aren't
gone.
as
Yeah.
directly applicable today. So I think that's probably the main reason why it's focused on more.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid argument. It's for me, it annoys me when you get a glorification of one and sort of a put down of the other. When,
Yeah.
if anything, especially those more modern empires were less evil. Again, both evil. But it's to me, it was always not a complaint or a defense of those modern empires, but it's like, well, surely we should see it's part of the history of trajectory of human beings getting better. I mean, for us, like I know for a fact in 200 years time, the future generations will look back at us and be like, they ate animals. The savages, they ate animals. Um,
Yep.
like there will be, yeah, and there'll be someone watching these videos back and like an internet historian saying, like, "How did they do this stuff?"
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I want to go on a lighter note than talking about the Romans and the British committing genocide. There's going to be a lighter fall on.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well,
no.
we'll find something happy to wrap up with.
Do you know much about the American liberation of Cuba? Well,
Uh,
liberation,
yeah, I was gonna
liberation.
say. I mean, I know a little bit about the Bay of Pigs, but that's
Okay,
about that.
that's a different one. I was trying to when you took on the Spanish, but I suppose I mean we could do the Bay of Pigs, but I don't think that's the best one to lead on for a
No, that's
positive
kind of
note.
going in the opposite direction of that.
Okay, right. I'll two fun questions to end on. First, do you think the CIA killed JFK?
Without question.
Okay, fair enough.
Without question. I was actually 2 weeks ago. I was in the square that had happened, and yeah. I was in Dallas Fort Worth area for a wedding, and yeah, I was just like, and we were walking around, we had a little tour guide and whatnot, and it was just like being there. Yeah. Like I stood in the spot where like the supposed guy on the grassy knoll was behind the fence. That's dude. I don't know if you've seen any pictures from that point of view or anything, but it's
Mm.
like okay, so it is a little morbid. They put an X on the road where he got shot. Yeah, it's a little morbid. But when you look through the trees, like if there are two trees that V out like that, and you stand in that spot and it is like a perfect line where you could just wait for him to cross in front of that. And it's just yeah, it's like there was obviously someone there. And you know, there's other elements to the story where it's like, yeah, like they wanted to keep fighting in Vietnam. Like, of course, like, duh.
Yeah. I mean, that's a definite lore. You could definitely put that for a lore lodge. I reckon that'd get a few million hits. So that's a
Well, Wendigoon's already done one a couple of years
yeah.
ago where
I
he was
saw
like,
that.
I proved that the CIA killed JFK with a whiteboard, which like that was a good one from what I recall.
I remember he started that video with the classic "I'm not suicidal," which I'm
Yeah.
gonna base. Neither of us are suicidal
No,
after
no,
saying it.
I love my life very
Yeah.
much, and if for whatever reason it ends prematurely, you can know for certain that it was suspicious.
Yep. And the second one, and then I'll read a few more comments, and then we'll finish off. The second one. What is your favorite war movie?
Ooh, favorite war movie. I think Master and Commander, probably. I think that counts. Non-naval war movie, I would say. I haven't seen it in a while, uh, but I really loved 1917.
Oh,
So
solid choice. Solid
yeah,
choice.
I'm a Roger Deakins fanboy to an extent as well. So like that's part of it. But yeah, it was so good.
As a film student, watching that was amazing. Like I most of that movie I had to watch it twice so I could, because the first time I was sitting there like, that's where they cut. That's where they cut to keep that like the image of a one take film is so amazing, and
Yep.
it's because I believe they shot it all on film as well, didn't they? So they literally only had one chance each shot.
No, they shot on the Alexa.
Did they? Oh, I thought they shot. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Nolan. No, no,
Yeah. Oh,
Nolan's
yeah.
always
No,
on film.
definitely Nolan did it.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, they shot on the Alexa Mini.
that's fair enough. But it's still
Yep.
incredible for one shot. Um,
Oh yeah.
right, and then we'll finish off with a couple last comments. Uh, another one from Trip. The taste of their food and the beauty of their women led English men to become the world's greatest sailors.
It would seem so, wouldn't it?
I'm glad that you said that, Trip, and neither of us did. So when you get cancelled, I'll be there for you on X now.
Yeah. Right.
Fine, Trip's uncancelable. I've seen his TikTok. That man cannot be cancelled.
Amazing.
Um, the USA demonize different food seasoning. That's true. Most of the people I hear who are against English food are Americans. Like most Europeans don't get that mad at it.
Yeah. I mean, when I was there, uh, I remember like there was the place that I was staying at for my semester abroad. The burger place at the bottom of my dorm had like the best burgers I'd ever had at the time. Fantastic,
Uh,
incredible.
we call that alcohol food. If it's there, like you sit there and it's good, but then you come home from a night out and somehow it's the best thing you've ever eaten in your entire life.
Oh no, no, no! It was literally like I'm sober at like
Oh, for real?
12 in the afternoon. Oh yeah, no, it was just it was like dry aged beef that they had like in a rack, and you could choose whether it was lean or like a little fattier, and they'd slice it right off of the rack and then grind it like on like in the moment, and then put it into a burger and cook it up or whatever. So like very much not frozen meat, like as fresh as you could get. And the ketchup that they made was like a homemade ketchup. I'm a ketchup guy. I like it. People are
Um,
gonna give me shit for
I'm
that, but
mayonnaise.
Fair.
I'm the classic white boy. Mayonnaise goes on everything.
It is good. But yeah, no, their ketchup was like a sweet ketchup, and their fries really good. And I was like, this is the best burger I've ever had. Since I have had better, Pelican Brewing Company in Cannon Beach, Oregon, best I've had now. But yeah, cut and grind, or it's cut plus grind in London. It's like up in uh, King's Cross area, just north of King's Cross Station.
Someone just commented fish and chips is goated. You are very correct, good sir.
Yeah,
Although I prefer
that's good
sausage and
too.
chips.
I had fish and chips a number of times while I was there as well. It's really
Do you
good.
get fish and chips in America or
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Usually at Irish pubs.
That makes sense, yeah. The Irish it's again two nations that have a long history of hating each other, have a lot of similarities, slightly because certain political leaders were trying to erase Irish culture, but we'll gloss over that because every time I bring it up, people get mad at me. For some reason, the wrong people get mad at me for that. My Cromwell video, like, yeah, I know I still get people mad at me for my Cromwell video where I said Cromwell was like one of the most evil Englishmen to live. The Irish loved that video. There's a lot of the Cromwell simps confuse me because most people, even in England, hate Cromwell. The man
That's
banned
wild.
the man banned Christmas. So to all four
Oh, how can you
Yeah.
like the guy if he's banning Christmas, the best holiday?
Yeah, he complained. Fine. We're doing the Cromwell rant because I'm going on to now. The Cromwell was like his Puritanism. He sat there and spent all of his career trying to get into power. Or not. I refused the crown because I'm such a Republican. I'm so proud. And I don't want this power, but also give me the power, just not the title.
Mm.
He would sit there and then he'd go, "I the Puritans are so oppressed. What's that? There's a church that isn't pure. Okay, right, burn that. But yeah, the Puritans, we're so oppressed. All the Irish are rebelling. Kill them all. Like that was Cromwell, and the only good thing was Cromwell allowed the Jews back into England because they had been banned previously. I can't remember which king did it, but they'd been It was medieval times. That was the regular thing to do. What shall we? I'm bored this afternoon. What shall I? Ah, yes, exile the Jews. That was the entire medieval Europe's entire history. But he let that. But that wasn't a good thing. It was for his own gain. So he had a group of people who would then be loyal to him in the country. I could write, if I have ranted, in fact, for a good hour or so on Cromwell, and it's on my YouTube channel, self-plug. You can check the video where I, at the
Amazing.
start of the video, I openly at the start of the video say this is going to be a biased video because I hate Cromwell. My Irish ancestors are looking down on me very proud right now. Finishing off, Thornbury getting unalived by the Wendussy. I
was back from earlier in the convo when we were talking about CIA and JFK. And it's like, I swear to God, I'm happy.
That would be an interesting way to just like, yeah, the Wendigos here. The CIA is the Wendigo is a CIA operative confirmed.
Wouldn't shock me at this point.
You should put that on a T-shirt. The Wendigo is a CIA operative.
Should.
1917, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. The white people don't like spice food, applies to New England suburbanites. And then fish and chip is goated. And then I now add malt vinegar to my chips and / fries. Oh yeah, because you call crisps chips, don't you?
We do.
It's not. I'll allow it. It's not as bad as aluminum. I'll allow it. Aluminum.
There's no other I in it.
Aluminium.
Where's the I?
It's in the textbooks I read in when I was growing up.
So they changed. It's different spelling then because there's only.
I believe that I actually did learn the history of this because I wanted to be a smart ass when I was younger, but I forgot that it was something to do with a particular company that was making aluminium in America. They couldn't afford to spell it correctly or something. It was literally down the money. So they changed the spelling and it just became, it's the same as soccer, which we call football. That's actually what the English upper class used to take. So English upper class used to call football soccer, and then the American populace took it on. So to the English, it became the American sort of speaking elite. Obviously, this was forgotten over time, but it was like elite, and then it's just. But yeah, I'm fairly certain I'll have to look into it. But yeah, aluminium is the here we go. Aluminium is the OG spelling and pronunciation.
No, it's
Listen,
aluminum.
he spelt it aluminum. I'm gonna have to look
Yeah.
this up. I wonder what way round it is. That's a whole other video on live stream.
Oh yeah,
Imagine
that's a whole thing in and of
2 hour
itself.
live stream on, is it aluminum or aluminium? But
We will
anyways,
find out.
we will finish up because I've at this point kept you for 2 hours because I definitely didn't mess up starting up the live stream, guys. But yes, thank you very much for coming on. And obviously, is there anything you'd like to plug before we disappear?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with it already, I'm one half of the Lore Lodge. We cover conspiracies, missing persons cases, folklore and mythology at times. But yeah, we've just really gotten a very big video that went out 2 weeks ago on the disappearance of the Malaysian air flight MH370. We're going to be doing a part 2 of that this coming Friday. Should be fun. Should be interesting. I know. The other Aidan Mattis, has been doing a lot of like heavy research for it and has found some really interesting theories that we look forward to sharing with you. But yeah, that's really it.
That's pretty cool. And to finish off, Stephen Phillips comments, "Illuminatium." to really
We're slowly getting closer to adamantium.
yeah. Marvel is going to Marvel. Pumpkin Bear says live tonight ? I believe you're not.
No, just due to the fact that we had a wedding yesterday and Mattis has more like family stuff going on today, we're gonna hold off on the live for today. But we'll be back next week, I believe.
This is technically the substitute live.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I'm the backup live, basically. But no, thank you very much for coming on and like taking some time out of your day to come on my little humble channel.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having
me. It was a great conversation, and yeah, I'll see you again soon. And to everyone watching at home, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Make sure I had it lined up, and bye. There we go.